And welcome back to the third and final part of tonight's episode. If you are just joining us, we've already finished parts 1 and 2, where we've tried and discussed Woodford Reserve Bourbon. And we've covered the first half of Sons of Anarchy Season 1, Episode 2, titled Seeds. I'd like to remind everyone to like and subscribe. Be sure to leave us your questions and your comments below. And remember that you can email us at ask@bourbonbros.tv. And whether it's a great question, whether the question sucks, just send us a question and we'll answer it on a future episode. All right, Ken, what do we want to get into next?
Well, I had the last topic, I believe. So what do you want to cover here?
Fair enough. I'm going to go with, and again, not a real kind of action-packed scene, but one that I think everybody can kind of relate to on some level, and that's the continual struggle with Opie and Donna.
Oh, yes.
Right. And
it's painful at times to watch because you can feel the emotions on both sides.
Yes, that I think that's really well said, because you can see it from Opie's perspective and Donna's perspective. Neither of them are right or wrong, right? It's not like one's right and one's wrong. Like, they both have valid points. Opie's coming at it from the perspective of he loves being a member of the Sons of Anarchy. It's easier for him to make ends meet. He enjoys the camaraderie that he gets from the club, but he was arrested. He went and did a stint in prison. And so Donna doesn't want him to go back to prison and doesn't want him involved in the club. So Opie has distanced himself for her, even though it's not what he wants. And in this episode, you really start to see that wearing on Opie, right? It's harder for him to make ends meet. They're getting behind in bills. He's unhappy because he's not doing what he really wants to do. Mm-hmm. And that really starts to come to a head.
Right. The car payments are late. As I recall, some checks she wasn't able to write checks at the store because they were bouncing. They're having some financial issues, and he really wants to do more with the club, but he also wants his family, so he's torn.
Yeah, and he knows, I think even Donna knows, it would be easier for them financially if he was back with the club. Mm-hmm. But she also knows that it's more dangerous, right? He could be killed, he could be arrested. So she's coming at it from the perspective of, I'd rather be, 3 months behind on the car payment and struggling to make ends meet than have you dead or in prison.
Right.
And Opie's seen it as, we don't have to be 3 months behind and not able to put food on the table because I could be earning money with the club.
Mm-hmm. Tough place to be.
It is. What I also liked about this dynamic is it kind of ripples beyond just Opie and Donna in private. You see Opie, which I think is probably one of the toughest things to do. He goes and asks his dad for money.
That's right. He asks Piney for money.
And Piney basically shuts him down due to his own health costs. And then, I guess like only a parent can do, he then pours salt in the wound by basically telling Opie to...
I don't know what the hell's wrong with you. Why don't you quit whining? Grow a dick and take care of your business.
And then he mentioned that there was, a job that was kind of low profile, right?
That's right.
That's
right. Because it was for Unser. No one was going to be, there's no risk of getting arrested or anything like that.
Just going to escort the truck.
And I think Opie wasn't sure Clay would want him to do it. But again, this is where I think Piney was truly helping his son by saying, look, you've got to go and talk to Clay. Like, you can't just keep hiding from the issue. And Opie working this run would potentially give him an opportunity to clear the air with Clay.
Right.
And we've got more to talk about, but I want to just quickly, because I think it really ties into this topic, I want to jump to the end. After the grocery store scene with Donna, where she didn't have enough money to pay, Gemma's there and sees it. And so she buys all of the groceries that Donna couldn't afford. And Donna tries to refuse those groceries, right? Doesn't want Gemma's help, right? Because she doesn't want to be indebted to Gemma or the club. And do you remember what Gemma does at the end of that scene?
She invites her to dinner, right?
Yes. I just wanted to quickly talk about that scene. Not where she invites them, but when they have the dinner.
Oh yeah, that was tough. That was painful.
So they don't go. And we don't know whether Donna told Opie or not. But you basically see Gemma hosting dinner with all of the club, wives and girlfriends are there, and they're having a great time. They're laughing. They've got a table full of food. You want so much for Opie. You love the character, and it's hard to watch him in this struggle and really being pulled in two opposite directions.
Yeah, it's painful. Painful.
Yep. What else did you like?
I think something I see developing there from the first episode, continuing on to this one was Jax and his continuing to read his father's journals. They show him on the roof. They show him on the roof, and he's of the club back at Teller Motors. He's going through them. He references his father's 1946 knucklehead. I think that was in the writings. It's there at Teller Motors. I don't know if it was in this scene or the last episode, but you do see the bike there.
Yep.
And you also see Gemma kind of watching him. She's aware that he possesses some of this stuff from the storage unit, and he's reading through it, and she's watching him pretty closely. She kind of is caught going through some of his stuff there in his room at Teller Motors. She's kind of looking to see very interested in what he's learning about their history.
Yeah, and you can obviously tell that Gemma knows enough about John Teller prior to his death to have a sense of what could be in the journals, but she doesn't actually know. And she's desperate to find out, right? So she's trying to, first she tries to pump Jax for information, and when he plays coy, as soon as he leaves the room, she's trying to go through all the stuff. But what I actually loved the most about that scene was that Jax knew. He knows exactly who his mother is and exactly what she's up to, so he takes it with him.
Custom job.
So that she can't get her hands on it.
Yeah, good catch.
Right?
Good catch.
And
she comes up empty-handed.
Yeah, the fact that he knew to hide it and that she would look for it, I thought was a very interesting and yet subtle tell. And as he's walking out the door, right, he grabs the journal, which he had kept with him when he came in the room, right, and kept it from her basically. And then he takes it with him, and he's just like, special project, as in like it's about a bike they're working on. So yeah, it.
Good writing, and you don't know yet the history. You don't know what Gemma knows. That develops. But at this point, you don't know.
Yeah, and I actually don't remember where this ultimately goes. I just, at this point, I remember it's a recurring theme, but I don't remember exactly where it goes. But I just, without even knowing where Kurt Sutter's going to take it, I'm looking at what's happening and the way that Jax has the journal. He's disclosed to his mom, Gemma, that he found the journal, and he's now taking it and reading it on the roof on a regular basis. Like, you just have to think at some point somebody's going to find it.
Mm-hmm.
So interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, me too. So what about you? I'm going to pour some more here as we get into the next few topics, but this is too good to pass up.
I've been pouring as we go, so I'm glad to see you're catching up.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go to something that is a little more on the fun and action side of things. We kind of hinted at it in our discussion earlier, but going back to Unser, let's talk about the escorting of Unser's shipment with the electronics components.
Mm-hmm.
Again, he hires Clay and the club to escort it so that it won't get hijacked. Opie has joined in for some quick and easy money.
Mm-hmm.
And then Uncle Jimmy gets involved.
Right.
So if you remember, they get a call and they refer to him as Uncle Jimmy. And then they have a discussion with the truck driver. And they're like, hey, there's, a potential problem or area where you could be hijacked. We're going to have you go a different way. And ultimately what they're doing is they're hijacking it.
Mm-hmm. You don't catch that at first.
That's right. And so the next thing you know, they're opening the back of the truck and Clay's talking to Jimmy.
50-50?
Just throw me 10%. It's my little gift to you. It might be a minute before we're up and running. I'd appreciate it if you and some of the other crews would be a little patient. Give us some time to get on our feet.
And I also find it interesting that it's not surprising, but it's interesting that Clay kept Opie out of the loop on what they were going to do.
Yeah. Good catch. He was totally unaware.
And then he tells Unser, right? Because Unser's like, what the hell?
What happened?
And Clay said basically that you needed a wake-up call and Sam Crow needed a goodwill gesture.
Mm-hmm.
And the part of this scene that really struck me is going back to the comment I said earlier. Unser thinks of these guys, including Clay, as friends.
Mm-hmm.
This how you treat an old friend?
Nah. That's how I treat an old cop.
And Clay just showed him that it's just business.
Yeah, he did. And the outcome of that is that Unser pushes off his retirement, which is exactly what Clay wanted.
That's right. And Clay basically told him to do it, right? He says, you push off your retirement until we can get back up and running, or I will hijack every one of your trucks.
Every one of them.
Right? So again, it's not what you do to friends, which is how Unser thinks of them after all of these years. And for Clay, you're just a means to an end.
Mm-hmm.
It's it would be a real kick in the gut if you're Unser.
Yeah. For sure.
All right. So that was mine, the shipment. What do you want to go to next?
Well, there's a diversion, right? How do they get these bodies out of the warehouse?
Of course, the key storyline.
Yeah, the key storyline.
Great choice.
So help me out with this one because I don't remember all the aspects of it. But there's a scene where Darby is talking to Alvarez about the gun deal from the first episode and how that didn't work out too well.
Right. And you find that Darby and Alvarez are kind of mutual partners because both of them dislike Sam Craig.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because, you've got the head of a white supremacist.
Yeah, he doesn't even like being there talking with him. You can see that he's uncomfortable even communicating with Alvarez.
But what happens after their meeting?
Well, he gets up and goes back to his car, and the SUV is gone. The Suburban, it's just gone.
It's my goddamn Suburban.
So someone jacked the Suburban.
Yeah, he's like, "Where's my Suburban?" Which is great. Like, just these are the little moments that I just love. Where if you think about it, like they had no problem going where their two mortal enemies are meeting and steal the guy's car. Just perfect.
And it's to get the car to transport the bodies that they're digging up at the crematory, right?
Yes. So they've got the bodies in the Suburban, and they're going to stage a murder scene with the bodies
in Lodi
and the Suburban
in Lodi,
which is going to blow back on now Darby and the Nords because it's his Suburban.
Right. It's brilliant.
Again, it's so subtle because they don't explain it, but this is where you start to see signs of the brilliant mind that Jax has in terms of his ability to see the whole chessboard and figure out all of the moves he needs to make to get what he wants in a way that is the safest, easiest, or most effective way possible. And this is fantastic. Now, there is a great scene where they're in the Suburban, they're being followed by Juice and Half Sack. And you have a car that cuts them off. And they don't know, the guy that cuts them off doesn't know that's Sons of Anarchy in the vehicle. But it looked like an episode of, it looked like from Fast and Furious, right? You had like an import car that was all tricked out,
like
and
a
then you had
Honda.
like a muscle car, right? And they're racing through the canyons and cut off the Suburban, and so they're pissed. And then right after that, a cop pulls them over. And they know, like, if that cop runs the plates on the Suburban, it's going to come up as the wrong plates. Then he's going to search the vehicle and find two dead bodies. Like, this thing gets bad.
And that's it.
In a hurry. And so they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. Tig is like, gun out, ready to go. Jax is like, hold on, like, let's not just start, shooting cops. And I love where Juice, no hesitation,
just rear ends the Suburban and distracts
or the cop car.
The cop, yeah, the cop car.
They run into the cop car.
Right, that's right. And the cop stops pursuing the Suburban, them in the Suburban, gets back in his car, right?
Actually, so they had stopped. He was out of the car approaching the Suburban. That was when Juice ran into him. Then he and Half Sack jump out and start running.
And he was going after him.
So the cop starts running after him. And then Jax and Tig jump out of the Suburban. disable the radio so he can't call anything in,
Flatten the
puncture
tires.
the tires, and then get back in the Suburban and go pick up Juice and Half Sack.
Brilliant.
There was one thing I bumped on, and maybe it was because this was in 2008 and we're now, living in a world where Tom Jones' What's New Pussycat is playing 14 times in a row everywhere. But they basically rammed into a cop car that didn't have any occupants in it and then ran off laughing. And then the other guys picked him up and they took off. At this point, no one's been harmed. The cop's not in fear for his life. They're going away from him. So he decides to draw his weapon and open fire. I don't understand what that was all about.
Yeah, I caught that.
But then they actually staged the crime scene, which was also hysterical, right? They'd gotten bags of blood and they're squirting blood everywhere. And
Now,
they almost ran over the guy's head.
Was there?
It was pretty gruesome.
Yeah, it was. But was there the blood, the IV, the blood in the bags? Where was that from? Was there any? Was that supposed to be someone specifically? So when they did DNA, that they would find someone, or did it matter? What were your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure. My guess would be that they either got it from Skeeter or they just stole it. But yeah, I mean, it looked like they opened fire into the windshield and basically fired into dead bodies. They had other bodies, or one body, and the one body is on the ground, and they ran the truck right up to the head. They're squirting blood everywhere. And
so they're just creating a bloody scene is all they're doing.
Yes.
Okay.
And then did you happen to see what it was Jax wrote on the window?
Yeah, something like M+N blood. So Mayans Nord's blood.
Ah, okay.
So I think it was basically to say that, hey, we know what you guys are doing.
And so it makes it look like to the cops that this is a Mayan Nord beef.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, now the Lodi crime scene investigative unit are going to have to go work on this, and they can't go and run the DNA on the two bodies
at the warehouse.
Warehouse.
And that allows the bodies to be moved. And
yes, which let's just touch on that real quickly, because that whole scene with Tig and Bobby was just great. It was short, but Bobby's down there starting to pull the girls out and they're burnt to a crisp. And Bobby looks back at Tig and says,
I hope they look better than this when they blew you.
A little.
A little.
Tig's his humor is great. So what about you? Any other topics you want to cover here to close out?
Well, I think the one that I'd want to finish up with is one that I thought was going to go one way and went in an entirely different way. And that's the scene after they've set up this fake murder scene, right? Mm-hmm. The diversion. They're heading back, I assume, to, the clubhouse, and they see the red muscle car that cut them off when they were in the Suburban. Mm-hmm. And so Jax immediately pulls in with I'm going to teach this guy a lesson. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Chibs maybe who was like, we don't have time for this. And Jack's like, it'll just take a minute. So he walks right up to the guy and just blasts him.
In a very long night, brother.
Come on, won't take long. Yo, pass me one of those Hostess thumb dips. What are you doing? Don't ever cut me off again, shithead.
The clerk of the store starts freaking out when this starts happening. So Jax turns around to start dealing with the clerk, and the guy that he was beating has now gotten up off the ground and pulls a gun and starts shooting.
Yeah, now things get ugly.
Now we've got a whole nother thing going on here. And so they're going at it, and a lot is happening in a hurry, but you want to take it on home from here?
Yeah, I mean, there ends up... who does it? Refresh my memory. There's an axe. That
it was the clerk.
It was the clerk. The clerk puts an axe in the back of the guy's head. And
yes.
And that's where it ends.
Yes. So this guy that pulled a gun on Jax and is now firing at him now has his back towards the cashier, and the clerk doesn't have a gun, but he's got an axe. And he decides to use it by putting it squarely into the back of the guy's head.
Right.
And the look on everyone's faces.
Holy shit.
And they've already disabled the recording tape, so there's no fear of that. But they had to get out of there.
That was not where I was expecting that scene to go.
No, me neither. And looking back at it, like both of those scenes, you know, the distraction of the car and, like you said, the Honda, both of those scenes, like, I don't know if they contribute much to the episode. Like, I don't know where that went. It showed that there's some brutal stuff that happens in the biker gang, but that's about all it served from my perspective. I don't know about yours. Did you get anything else from that?
The only thing I got out of it, and maybe it was just a device for the axe, because when the clerk put the axe in the back of his head, once again, I literally said out loud, Kurt Sutter. That's all Kurt Sutter right there. That gruesome axe in the back of the head, unexpected, out of left field, 100% Kurt Sutter. And so I don't know if it was created just to set up that scene, or if that was just how he decided to end that little altercation. I would love to know where that came from, because you're right. It's not really germane to the storyline. You get a little bit of some action out of it and then some violence out of it, but it was pretty shocking.
Yeah. We'll see where it goes. Maybe it develops somewhere else. But right now I didn't get a lot from it other than, yeah, that was a little bit of fun violence.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the episode, and I do feel like Kurt Sutter's starting to get a really solid foundation established, and I'm really looking forward to some of the upcoming episodes.
Right. I think we're starting to get introduced to some new characters. I think that's important. It was entertaining. You know, I liked the episode. But yeah, interesting to see where this goes.
Well, and that's going to wrap up our discussion. And next week, we are going to get into the episode 3 titled Funtown.
Funtown, yes. Anything but
fun.
And
I was just going to say, I'll give everyone a little hint that if you haven't seen the episode, there's nothing fun about Funtown.
Right. Especially if you're a parent.
Yes. Yes. Which then leads us to the second most important question of the show. The first most important was what we were drinking tonight. Mm-hmm. The second most important is, what are we drinking next week?
Interesting. Well, I don't know if you have any on, on hand, but I was thinking the Basil Hayden's. What are your thoughts on that?
The Basil Hayden's. I do have that.
Okay.
So we could do that. And I'll leave you planting. Now, have you had Basil Hayden's before?
Yes, I have. I've had it once before, maybe twice.
Okay. So we'll save your opinion for next week.
Yeah, don't spoil it.
But I'm going to plant a little seed. I have a feeling that I'm going to share some information with you about Basil Hayden. And I'm going to tell you why you'll never want to order Basil Hayden again at a bar or a restaurant.
Okay. Bold statement.
And I'm not referring to because you think they're going to be playing Tom Jones' What's New Pussycat 14 times in a row. I'm talking about when we can go back to a bar or restaurant.
Right. Let's be
I'm going to tell
there.
you why you'll never order Basil Hayden there.
Okay.
I'm going to actually tell you why, other than the once or twice that you've had it, and you'll obviously have it next week, you probably won't have it again after I share this information with you.
Okay.
But, and here's the twist, you're still going to be glad you have it in your cabinet.
Okay. Well, I can't wait for this
there's
explanation.
the riddle.
Okay.
Why would you want to have a bottle that you won't want to drink or order at a restaurant? I'll fill you in on all of that and more next week.
I can't wait.
And that is going to do it for tonight's show. Look, we hope you had as much fun as we did. We have a blast doing this. For those of you watching on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe, and be sure to check out our channel for more episodes. But most of all, I want to sincerely thank you for joining us for tonight's episode. And we want to cordially invite you to join us here each and every week on the Liquid Courage Show. Thanks, everyone. Good night.